I remember the sound before I remember the pain. The beeping monitor to my right, the low hum of the air vent, the fluorescent lights buzzing like they were irritated to be alive. I was 27, lying in a hospital bed with a dull ache spreading across my ribs, my stomach, my back, everywhere. Kidney failure felt like being squeezed from the inside out. Everything hurt, especially pretending not to. I stared at the ceiling tiles when my parents walked in. Mom first, purse clutched tight like she was entering a courtroom she owned, Dad behind her, bored already. My sister Lexi wasn't with them. She never was when I needed something. Mom didn't look at my face. She looked at the IV pump like it offended her. "You look worse," she said flatly. Dad added, "Doctor said you're not doing what you're supposed to, always causing trouble." I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. I need a transplant. The doctor said it clearly. Mom raised an eyebrow. A transplant? Again with the drama. "It's not drama," I whispered. "It's medical. They said dialysis won't be enough anymore." Dad sighed loudly like he wanted the whole hospital to hear how inconvenient I was. "You're acting like you're dying." I blinked. "I am dying." He waved a dismissive hand. "Everyone dies. You're not special." My lips parted, but nothing came out. My chest tightened instead. They always did this. Tell me pain wasn't real because they didn't want responsibility. Tell me illness was exaggeration because it got in the way of Lexi's perfect girl spotlight. Mom looked around at the room at the machines. "This place smells depressing. Did the doctor say how much all this is going to cost?" I opened my mouth, then shut it. Of course that was her priority. "They said the donor testing has to start soon," I said. "And you both?" "I'm asking if you'll get tested." Mom froze like I'd just asked her to donate her house. Dad scoffed. "We're not giving organs. We're not getting cut open because you can't take care of yourself." "I didn't do this to myself," I said softly. "It's genetic." "So blame genetics," Dad said. "Not us." Mom tapped her nails on the bed rail. "Why aren't you asking Lexi? She's younger, healthier, better match, probably." "Because she refuses to pick up the phone," I said. Mom smirked. "She's busy, unlike you." My heart pounded so loudly I thought they might hear it over the machines. "So, you're saying no?" Mom shrugged. "If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. People survive these things all the time." "No, they don't," I whispered. She sighed dramatically. "God, you're needy." The door swung open before I could respond. Lexi strutted in wearing a short leather jacket and too much perfume for a hospital room. Behind her was her boyfriend, Chase, tall, smug, expression permanently stuck between boredom and arrogance. Lexi dropped her bag on my bedside table, knocking over my water cup like it meant nothing. "Seriously?" I whispered. She rolled her eyes. "Relax. It's just water. Just water. Just my life. Just me." Chase leaned against the wall, checking his phone. "So, is she dying or not? We have dinner at 8. Mom smiled at him like he was royalty. "No one's dying," she said quickly. "She's being dramatic." My fingers curled into my blankets. "Can you please take this seriously? I need a kidney, or my organs fail." Dad clapped his hands once. "Enough. Lexi's boyfriend has something to say." I frowned. "What does Chase have to do with this?" Lexi grinned like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Chase offered to get tested." My eyebrows knit. "He did?" Chase shrugged, still staring at his phone. "Yeah, why not?" Something twisted in my stomach. I didn't trust him. I didn't trust anything in this family. But before I could say anything, Mom stepped closer and said almost proudly, "And we already signed the consent forms." I froze. My breath hitched. You what?" "We signed the paperwork so he could start the process immediately," Mom said. "We handled it." I stared at her, heat crawling up my face. "You didn't even ask me?" Mom scoffed. "It's a kidney, not a wedding. Stop being dramatic." Dad rubbed his forehead. "And he is a better investment anyway." The room tilted. "A better what?" "Investment," he repeated, annoyed. "Look at you. No job, no future, always sick, always costing us money. Chase actually matters. His career is taking off. He has potential. Lexi added, Yeah, he's important. You're just you. Chase grinned, smug. Yeah, I'm kind of a big deal. My lungs felt like they were collapsing. So you gave my donor testing to Lexi's boyfriend? Mom tilted her head. Why waste treatment on a disappointment? The words sliced me in half. I felt the machines beeping around me. I felt my throat tighten. I felt every drop of air disappear. I whispered, I'm your daughter. Mom blinked. And? Dad scoffed. Blood doesn't mean we throw our health away for you. Lexi laughed. Chase donating is way more valuable. He recovers faster than you would anyway. But I'm the one dying, I said, voice cracking so hard it hurt. Mom shrugged. If you're meant to survive, you will. I stared at them, at the people who raised me, fed me, dressed me, shaped me, and I felt something inside me go cold, steady, solid, not poetic, not dramatic, just a truth that clicked into place. I wasn't their daughter. I was a burden. I wasn't someone worth saving. I was someone they were willing to lose. And the worst part? They looked relieved saying it out loud. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Not in front of them. Lexi took Chase's arm. We're going to celebrate at dinner. Don't text me. We need to enjoy our night. Mom added, You should rest. Or pray. Or something. Dad said nothing at all. He just walked out without looking back. The door closed. I stared at the blank white wall, at the monitor, at the IV line snaking into my arm. And in that moment, I understood something I had never let myself admit. If I didn't save myself, no one else would. Not my parents, not my sister, not the man they picked over me. And as my body throbbed with pain and betrayal, a different kind of strength rose in my chest. Not gentle, not symbolic. Real, sharp, focused. Revenge didn't come from rage. It came from clarity. And I finally had clarity. The morning after they left me in that hospital bed, I signed myself out. The nurse looked startled when she saw me sitting up, plugging out the heart monitor. You shouldn't be moving this much. I shouldn't be a lot of things, I said quietly. But here we are. She opened her mouth, then closed it like she sensed a fire she couldn't put out. I'll start the discharge papers. I nodded, because I wasn't spending another minute waiting for a family that only showed up to pick at my bones. Walking out of the hospital felt like stepping into a world that didn't care whether I survived or collapsed. Cars rushed by. People laughed on the sidewalk. A bus screeched to a stop. My legs shook, but I stayed upright. I looked at my phone. No missed calls, no messages, not even a fake "feel better." Only one notification, Lexi's Instagram story. Dinner with my man. He's donating for me, not for the ungrateful one. She filmed Chase lifting a glass of champagne. There was a caption under it. Some people are just born useless. My stomach knotted so tight I couldn't breathe. I shut my phone off. I took a bus home, gripping the railing so tight my fingertips went numb. When I reached our house, my parents' house technically, the lights were bright, loud music blasted from inside, laughter poured through the windows. I stepped through the front door. They didn't even notice me at first. They were too busy. A full dinner party. Lexi in the center of the living room, receiving compliments as if she cured cancer. Chase showing off his arm like he had already donated the kidney. Mom saw me and frowned like I brought dirt into her perfect home. What are you doing here? You should be resting. I needed to get my things, I said. Dad didn't even turn from the TV. Take them quietly. Lexi laughed. She looks like a ghost. Maybe the transplant is too late. Her friends snickered. Chase smirked. Well, at least her suffering is making us famous. My TikTok about being a donor is blowing up. Mom clapped. See? He's smart. He knows how to turn things into wins. My chest twisted painfully. You're turning my kidney failure into content? Lexi shrugged. It finally made you useful. I stepped into the kitchen because I felt my knees weakening. I needed to breathe. I needed a minute. But my parents followed. Dad leaned against the counter. Listen, you're wasting energy arguing. Chase donating benefits everyone. You should be grateful we found someone willing to go through the trouble for you. He's not donating for me, I said. He's doing it so he looks good online, and you're letting him. Mom shook her head, exasperated. Stop being jealous of your sister. Chase helps her, so he helps us. That's family. That's not family, I whispered. Mom's voice snapped cold. You don't get to define family, not when you've contributed nothing. I stared at her. You're really okay with me dying, aren't you? She didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. If it happens, you won't be the first disappointment who couldn't survive adulthood. Dad nodded. You're a liability. Always have been. Something in me cracked, loud, invisible, final. I walked past them, up the stairs and into my old room. I packed in silence, clothes, papers, old medical bills that I had paid alone, photos from a time before I understood what kind of parents I had. I reached under the bed and pulled out a box I had forgotten. Doctor notes from years ago, the ones that said my kidney condition was discovered too late because my parents ignored early symptoms. I stared at those documents. My hand trembled. My parents didn't just neglect me, they created the situation I was in. I sat down, breathing hard, but then something clicked. I didn't need a symbolic revenge, not a poetic one, not silence. I needed the truth, the real truth, the one hidden in these papers, the one they thought I'd stay too scared to ever use. I packed the documents, every single one. As I zipped the bag, I heard footsteps. Lexi stood in the doorway chewing gum, looking bored. You're actually leaving? Like, forever? She asked. Yeah, I said. She smirked. Good, less competition. For what? I asked. She shrugged. Attention, resources, love, life. Then she leaned in, whispering, And don't worry, if you die, I'll make sure Chase dedicates a post to you. She walked away laughing. I stared at the empty hallway she left behind. My hands shook, but not from fear this time, from clarity, from purpose, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't leaving defeated. I was leaving with power, with proof, with leverage, with a plan forming so sharp it left no space for doubt, a revenge not built from poetry, but from consequence, the kind of consequence they never thought I'd have the strength to deliver. I walked out of that house, and none of them followed. Good, because the next time we spoke, they wouldn't be laughing, they wouldn't be celebrating, they wouldn't be choosing someone else's life over mine, they would be begging, and for the first time ever, I would finally decide no. I found a cheap room 2 towns over, barely a room, honestly. A bed, a cracked window, a sink that whined before water dripped out. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was far from them. The next morning, while my parents were probably eating brunch and bragging about Lexi's birthday plans, I walked into the hospital administrator's office with my folder of documents. The woman who greeted me looked calm, almost cold. How can I help? I placed everything on her desk. My parents withheld medical information about my earliest kidney symptoms. For years. They also signed consent forms for someone else to receive a transplant meant for me. She didn't interrupt. She didn't smile. She just kept listening. I took a breath. And they used my medical condition for social media attention. Her eyes flashed. You have proof? I nodded and pushed over the papers. The administrator called in a compliance officer, then a second, then a hospital attorney. Every single face in that room tightened more and more as they flipped through the pages. One of them asked, Your parents knowingly delayed your diagnosis for years? Yes. And recently attempted to redirect a transplant to your sister's boyfriend? Yes. And you were not consulted? Never. They exchanged glances. The kind of glances that meant something big was shifting. The attorney folded her hands. We'll need statements, formal ones. These documents open multiple violations, ethical, legal, procedural. There will be hearings. Good, I said. Do you want your family notified that you initiated this process? I shook my head. No, let them find out the way they've made me find out everything my whole life, with no warning. 2 weeks passed. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I didn't know. I ignored all of it. I focused on my treatment. The hospital moved me to a priority program once they saw the obstruction in my medical history. Real doctors, real care, real urgency. Then one afternoon, someone knocked on my motel door. I opened it. My mom, my dad, Lexi, Chase, all 4 of them. Mom's mascara was running. Dad looked pale, sweaty. Lexi's lips trembled like she couldn't believe the world wasn't revolving around her. Chase looked scared, actually scared, for the first time in his life. Mom stepped forward. "Sweetheart, we need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, calm. "What do you want?" Dad swallowed hard. We got letters from the hospital, from investigators." Lexi's voice cracked. "They said we endangered you, that we interfered with treatment." Chase added quickly. "They said I might get charged for fraud." Mom shook her head violently. "Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you misunderstood." I stared at them. "You want me to fix the consequences of your choices?" Mom whispered. "Please, we could lose everything." Dad said, "You're our child." I almost laughed. "Now I'm your child? When you needed someone to take the punishment?" Lexi wiped her eyes. "You can't ruin our lives over a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said. "It was years of decisions, choices, neglect, cruelty." Dad snapped. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said firmly. "For once, I'm being factual." Chase stepped forward. "Please, just say something to help." I held up a hand. "This is not my problem anymore." Mom grabbed my arm. "If you don't intervene, we'll lose our reputation." I pulled my arm back. "You cared more about your reputation than my kidneys, than my life." Dad's voice finally cracked. "We're begging you." And there it was, the moment I never thought I'd live to see. I met their eyes one by one. "You didn't fight for me," I said quietly. "You didn't even care if I lived." I stepped back inside my room. "And now? I don't care if you lose what you chose over me." Mom started to cry. Lexi sobbed dramatically. Dad cursed under his breath. Chase muttered something about lawyers. I closed the door, locked it, sat on my bed, and listened to the sound of them pounding, shouting, pleading. I didn't open the door. Not once. A month later, the hearings began. I didn't need to attend every session. The documents, recordings, and evidence spoke louder than my presence. My parents faced charges for medical interference and negligence. Lexi and Chase faced fraud investigations for attempting to manipulate the transplant donor list. Their social circle collapsed almost overnight. People stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped pretending they were a perfect family. Meanwhile, my treatment finally stabilized. A real donor, a legitimate match, was found through a hospital program, not through lies. When I woke up after surgery, a nurse held my hand. "You're going to be okay," she said. And I believed her, because I was alive. Not because of them, but because I finally chose me. Weeks later, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "We lost everything. Please come home. We need you." I deleted it. No hesitation, no guilt, no poetic forgiveness, because some people don't need silence. They need distance. And my parents? They finally learned that you can't treat your child like trash and expect them to save you when the consequences arrive.